doing this with the Turkish government, so we are it's absolutely one of these things. That was Dario.
Next!
It used to be a habitat stuff many years ago. It's in our cities unit. Not quite 1 or 2 years.
Hi.
Yeah.
Very nice to meet you.
Oh, it's filling up.
Yes.
Next! 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 Next!
Yeah. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the celebration of the International Day for Zero Waste. It's organised by the Permanent Mission of Turkey and the Geneva Environment Network at United Nations Environment Programme in cooperation with my organisation, UN Habitat. I'm Graham Alabaster. I'm the Chief of the Geneva office here at UN Habitat, and it's my pleasure to welcome you and moderate this session today. We're convening today, as you know, because in December 2022, at the initiative of the Turkey government, 105 other member states joined the United Nations General Assembly to adopt a resolution proclaiming the 30th of March as the International Day of Zero Waste, to be observed annually. The United Nations Environment Programme and United Nations Habitat jointly facilitate the observance of this International Day. This is the 4th of many celebrations here in Geneva and around the world. As Geneva is a major global hub for global governance, has the substances home to several international organizations and multilateral environmental agreements aiming at beating waste pollution, we could not miss the opportunity to bring together some of the key stakeholders involved in the different processes to discuss this year's theme on food waste. And they are moving forward and how we move forward this agenda. So after some opening statements and messages for this event, we will hear from leading voices from the Geneva steps taken, who the actors in Geneva have taken forward the zero waste agenda and how zero waste starts on our plates and key initiatives to reduce food waste. So let us start by hearing video messages of the heads of UNEP and UN Habitat leading on the facilitation of the celebration.
Same for me. Oh, no. Started. See the ditches.
Today, we mark the International Day of Zero Waste, an annual call to rethink how we produce, consume, and manage our resources. Since its first observance just 3 years ago, this UN Day, facilitated by UNEP and our friends at UN Habitat, has championed bold action. This year's theme is Zero Waste Starts on Your Plate, as we turn to a preventable crisis, food waste, in our homes. In 2022 alone, 1 billion tons of food was thrown away, and meanwhile, hundreds of millions of people faced hunger. So the consequences of these losses and waste are really far-reaching. Food loss and waste generate an estimated 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. And food waste alone is responsible for up to 14% of potent methane emissions, largely from rotting organic waste. And methane, as we know, is over 80 times more powerful than CO2 in the short term. So reducing these emissions would make a real difference to slowing the rate of global warming. And of course, if we didn't waste food from the farm to fork, we would not waste all the inputs, including soils and water and efforts in the farming itself. Reducing food waste also makes sense from an economic point of view. For every US dollars that a city invests in preventing food waste, it saves $8. Households benefit as well with lower grocery bills when we don't throw out our food and when we use everything that we buy. There's so much more to gain. Preventing food waste saves land and water and energy, as I mentioned, but also fostering circular economy approaches creates new jobs and opportunities. At COP30 climate talks last year in Belém, Brazil, UNEP launched the Food Waste Breakthrough with the UK, Japan, and Brazil, aiming to halve food waste and provide strong support for cities and businesses in the global south. This year's climate talks offer an opportunity to embed these actions in the implementation of climate plans and to mobilize finance for cities and, of course, to deliver durable methane reductions. So I therefore invite all nations to step into this space to champion how we can reduce our food waste. Together we can deliver real methane cuts, we can strengthen food systems, and we can build a circular, zero waste, zero emissions future. That transformation begins on our plates.
Cities around the world are consuming more and more resources, food, water, and energy. Yet, much of it is wasted. 1/3 of all food is lost before it reaches people. At the same time, more than 1 billion people live in informal settlements and slums without basic services. Billions still lack access to water in their homes. These imbalances undermine efforts to build cities that are resilient, sustainable, and fair. At UN Habitat, we see zero waste not as an isolated goal, but as a part of how we plan and manage our cities. When cities put people at the center, prioritizing safe homes, secure neighborhoods, and basic services, waste can be significantly reduced. Cities that integrate food systems, water services, and waste management show what's possible. They recover surplus food, reduce water loss, and turn organic waste into compost or energy, creating circular systems that save money, cut emissions, and generate jobs. Informal workers, waste pickers, and community water managers are at the heart of these solutions. Recognizing their contribution strengthens local systems, creates livelihoods, and ensures that no one is left behind. Data is also critical. Tools such as UN Habitat's Waste-Wise Cities platform help city leaders identify where waste occurs, take targeted action, and attract financing solutions. What we measure, we can manage, and what we can manage, we can transform. On this International Day of Zero Waste, let us not waste the moment. Let us build cities where resources circulate, local systems work efficiently, and dignity is protected for everyone.
Thank you very much, dear principals. And now it's my absolute honour and pleasure to invite our chief guest today, His Excellency Barak, the permanent representative of Turkey to the UN office in Geneva and other international organisations. We'd welcome your opening address, please, Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Alvasar, Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear colleagues. We're extremely pleased to organize this edition of the International Day of Zero Waste event in collaboration with UNEP Europe Office, UN Habitat, and Geneva Environment Network. We have prominent speakers with us today at the dais from various organizations, which shows us the cross-cutting nature of the waste issue. Today, the world produces more than 2 billion tons of municipal waste every year. If current trends continue, this amount may reach 3.8 billion tons by 2050. These are stark numbers that show the gravity of the issue. Waste pollution threatens human health, causes large-scale economic losses, and places enormous burden on ecosystems. It also exacerbates climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. For this reason, zero waste approaches are becoming relevant more than ever, for achieving sustainable development. These approaches focus on preventing waste, using resources more efficiently, and supporting circular economy solutions. Since 2017, Turkey, my country, has been at the forefront to place the zero waste firmly on the international agenda and is encouraged to get stronger global cooperation in addressing the waste crisis. The national initiative of Turkey, under the auspices of the First Lady, Her Excellency Emine Erdoğan, has become a truly global movement in 2022 with the adoption of the United Nations General Assembly resolution establishing the International Day of Zero Waste. This day is a valuable opportunity to raise awareness worldwide about the waste crisis, its environmental, social, and economic impacts, while promoting sustainable consumption and production patterns. This year's International Day of Zero Waste focuses on food waste, one of the most pressing yet preventable global challenges. As the video messages have shown, every year around 1 billion tons of food are wasted, which is equivalent of almost 1/5 of all food available to consumers. This is especially worrying at a time when hundreds of millions of people around the world increasingly face hunger and food insecurity. Therefore, reducing food waste is not only an environmental challenge, but also moral and socio-economic imperative. The striking situation shows that the way we produce, consume, and manage our resources must change. Food loss and waste create around 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. It produces one of the very strong greenhouse gases, methane. For this reason, it is safe to say that reducing food waste is one of the fastest and most effective ways to reduce emissions, while also making food systems more resilient and sustainable. Turkey believes that zero waste approaches must be considered an integral component of climate action. Hence, zero waste will be among the priorities of Turkey's COP31 presidency later this year. Reducing food waste is an area where we can make real progress in a relatively short time. In this sense, the COP31 in Antalya this year should not be seen only as an intergovernmental platform negotiations. With the sincere engagement of all stakeholders, the COP31 is also an opportunity to promote practical and achievable solutions that can deliver tangible benefits for both climate action and sustainable development. And today we once again remind the international community that solving the waste problem and addressing the climate change challenge requires joint action. Turkey remains committed to working with all partners to advance zero waste approaches to support transition towards more sustainable and climate resilient societies. It will be an honor to this distinguished panel and, of course, the architect of the zero waste movement, First Lady of Turkey, whose efforts and commitment have turned the idea of zero waste into a global movement, a global action item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those very words of wisdom. It's now our pleasure to hear a message from the First Lady of the Republic of Turkey, Emine Erdoğan, who is the chair of the UN Secretary General's Advisory Board of Eminent Persons on Zero Waste, about why reducing food waste is a global endeavor.
Değerli hanımefendiler, beyefendiler, sevgili gençler ve çocuklar, Uluslararası Sıfır Atık Günü'nün 4. yılını birlikte kutlamanın mutluluğunu yaşıyoruz. Sıfır atık vizyonunu tüm dünyaya ulaştıran büyükelçiliklerimize, Birleşmiş Milletler'e, Birleşmiş Milletler Çevre Programı'na, Birleşmiş Milletler Habitat'a ve tüm sıfır atık gönüllülerine şükranlarımı sunuyorum. Bu yılki temamızı gıda israfı olarak belirledik. Çünkü bugün dünyada 673 milyon insan açlıkla mücadele ediyor. 2 milyardan fazla insan yeterli ve dengeli beslenemiyor. Her 12 kişiden biri kronik açlık riski altında yaşamını sürdürüyor. Bu nedenle istedik ki çöpe attığımız her yiyeceğin ardında oluşan zincirleme etkileri fark edelim. Ve bu gidişata hep birlikte dur diyelim. Böylece Afrika'da, Asya'da, Gazze'de ve birçok coğrafyada açlıkla ölüm arasındaki o korkunç sınırda yaşayan kardeşlerimizin yanında yer alabilelim. Ne acıdır ki dünyada 5 yaş altı çocuk ölümlerinin yaklaşık yarısı açlıktan kaynaklanıyor. Nice çocuk büyüyemeden, güzel bir gün göremeden hayata veda ediyor. Halbuki küresel ölçekte israf edilen gıdanın sadece 1/4'ünü kurtarabilsek, dünyadaki açlığa son verebiliriz. Dünyada her yıl 5,8 trilyon tabak yemeğe eşdeğer 2,3 milyar ton gıda tüketilmeden kaybediliyor. Ziyan edilen her bir lokmada hayatı o lokmaya bağlı insanların hakkı var. Savaş bölgelerinde açlık ve susuzluktan kıvranan insanların yakarışları var. Unutmayalım ki gıda kaybının ve israfının faturasını tüm insanlık birlikte ödüyor. Küresel sera emisyonlarının %8 ila 10'unun sebebi gıda kaybı ve israfıdır. Gıda israfı endeksi raporuna göre gıda israfının %60'ı evlerde gerçekleşiyor. Demek ki bizler biraz dikkat, biraz farkındalık ve küçük davranış değişiklikleriyle pekala bu büyük israfın önüne geçebiliriz. Nitekim 2017 yılında başlattığımız Sıfır Atık projesinde bugüne kadar edindiğimiz tecrübeler bize gösterdi ki davranış değişikliği en güçlü çevre ve iklim politikasıdır. Yani sorumlu bir davranış tüm insanlığı ve doğayı halka halka kuşatan bir iyilik dalgasına dönüşebilir. Mesela sadece bir meyveyi çürütmeyerek bile o meyvenin yetişmesi için sarf edilen suyu, enerjiyi ve insan emeğini boşa harcamamış oluruz. Aynı zamanda doğanın kendini yenilemesine fırsat verir, çevre kirliliğinin ve sera gazı emisyonlarının azalmasına katkı sağlarız. O halde gelin el ele verelim, küçük adımlarla büyük mesafeler kat edelim. Mutfaklarımızı israf merkezleri olmaktan kurtaralım, onları nimete vefa mekanları yapalım. En önemlisi de bereketin kıymet bilmekle arttığını unutmayalım ve çocukların aç kalmadığı adil bir dünyayı omuzumuza kuralım.
Thank you very much indeed, Excellency. Now, to continue setting the stage for this event, you'll now hear from UNEP and Habitat, the co-facilitators of Zero Waste Day, how we can move forward zero food waste. I'm joined in this segment by my colleague and friend Arnold Kriephofer, the director of UNEP for the Pan-European region. Arnold.
Thank you very much, Graham. Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Turkey, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this fourth celebration of International Day of Zero Waste here in Geneva on behalf of UNEP. And I want to, at the outset, acknowledge the ambassador, the leadership of Turkey in this effort, not least also through the First Lady, and for challenging us collectively to move forward on this agenda. It has already been said that we are facing globally a growing waste challenge, which is essentially linked to unsustainable production and consumption. And while it is a global challenge, we have heard the numbers already. We're looking, currently at between 2.1 to 2.3 billion tons of municipal waste each year. It is also very much a local challenge because local governments, cities and communities will have to deal with a possible increase by 2050 to 3.8 billion tons. And what this also means is that, of course, food production and consumption is very heavily geared towards cities. And so 80% of all food consumption is expected to take place there. And this, I think, is an added emphasis to the excellent partnership that UNEP has with UN Habitat and other organizations in shining a light on this problem and making sure that food waste, as this year's Zero Waste Day encourages us to highlight, is addressed at global, but also at the local level where it really impacts people the most. Food waste exacerbates food insecurity and weakens resilience at a time of global instability. And not to tackle food waste is also an economic opportunity lost. It simply makes no economic sense. Food loss and waste costs the global economy around $1 trillion every year, while the alternative, organics diversion, for example, creates value, jobs, local business opportunities. So it makes good sense to tackle waste, food waste loss and food waste. And so this year's theme is also an opportunity to highlight the connection between food systems and the triple planetary crisis, but also between hunger and malnutrition and realizing these opportunities for economic prosperity that lie before us. By reducing food waste, countries and communities can ease climate stresses, protect limited resources, and reinforce food system stability. We have already heard the impact that food waste has in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of methane emissions. And so avoiding food waste upstream also eliminates emissions from production, transportation, refrigeration, and disposal. So it helps us to make the entire food chain more sustainable. And as already been mentioned, COP31 is a unique opportunity to position also today's theme in terms of this major international negotiation that takes place later this year in Antalya. Reducing food waste can also boost, of course, food security, livelihoods, and environmental stability. And what do we need to do to make this happen? We need to embrace innovation, I put before you, by fostering circular economy approaches in agri-food systems. We need to encourage reduce, reuse, and repurposing of food waste in line with the creation of new job opportunities and improved livelihoods. We need to change consumer behavior. We need to look at date labeling reform, my apologies, to reduce the confusion between what is best before and what is the difference to use by labels. We need to embrace digital tools and data systems. And I expect that some of these elements will be touched upon by the panel here this afternoon. We also need to make sure that surplus food, as Madame Erdogan has also mentioned, reaches those that need it. So surplus food that remains still safe for consumption should be redirected to people rather than wasted. As I have already hinted at, we need to make sure that we can reduce food loss across the supply chain. And in many economies, this is a better investment than simply producing more food. And so investing in the cold chains, storage infrastructure, rural transport, and market access can make a drastic and dramatic difference as we try to address food loss. And another important message is, of course, to transform how we manage organic waste through upcycling, valorization, and a better market integration of products stemming from organic waste valorization. And these approaches need to have, of course, an inclusive and gender responsive approach. As this theme encourages us to reflect upon this transformation, let me repeat again that this transformation starts on our plates. It is a very personal theme this year for the International Day to celebrate zero waste. And so let me welcome you again for the discussion this afternoon. And Graham, let me hand it back over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Arnold. It's now my pleasure to give some points on behalf of UN Habitat, my host agency, again, as a partner with UNEP and the government of Turkey in this very worthy initiative. We've all heard about the statistics that by 2050, 70% of the world will live in urban space, but perhaps one statistic which you don't hear so often is that about 60% of that urban space that will exist in 2050 has yet to be built. So when it comes to managing urban space, we have to think about existing urban space, bearing in mind the inequities we know exist in many countries and cities around the world, but we also have to very carefully plan for that future urban space to ensure it's sustainable in the long term. And of course, waste management overall is one of the most critical issues because it's usually falls to the responsibility of local authorities. It has severe environmental impacts if not dealt with. And in fact, one of the many reasons why we suffer so much with still living with a legacy of poor waste disposal is because large amounts of food waste were originally landfilled and are busily producing methane at this moment. And it's a very difficult issue to manage that methane from existing landfills without investing lots of money. So there really is a moment now where we have to think very clearly about how we're going to move forward, not just in managing the existing urban space, but also how we plan for future urban space. And it's estimated, that municipal waste is going to hit about 3.8 billion tons by 2050. So, this idea of bringing and educating people to understand about waste reduction is a key component of how we manage this work. We've already heard about the Waste-Wise Cities programme from my principal, Madam Anna Claudia, but the Waste-Wise Cities work, and in fact the indicators, is an example of a long-term partnership we've had with UNEP, because when we were working out how to monitor the SDG for waste, which falls across several of the SDGs. The part for waste management sits in SDG 11, the part for recycling sits in SDG 12. So we work very closely together with UNEP to develop a monitoring system to support the member states to ensure we put a good baseline in place for monitoring waste management. So it was one of the SDGs that we do have a good understanding and the data, but of course we do have to go a bit further as we move forward. We've also been working very closely to get and advocate for zero waste cities, and I'm happy to say that there are some 20 zero waste cities already around the world which have demonstrated they put in place management practices to reduce waste by significant amounts as part of the 5R strategies for overall waste management. The other very important issue about zero waste is its impact on the informal economy, and particularly the informal sector workers. It actually, recycling and reuse creates up to 200 times more jobs than landfilling of waste. So here lies an area that we can focus on in the future. We can promote in some informal sector employment to tackle these zero waste problems, not just with food waste, but with other streams of wastes. So moving forward, we know that this is a very clear, whatever comes after the SDGs, we very much hope that waste management will be critical to that, and that all of us need to work together, both at national level, but also at city level, to understand how we put these good practices on the ground into practice, and to make make waste models and bring circularity down to the operational level. So we can't really waste a moment. As I say, the march of urbanization is going ahead very fast. We have an opportunity to impact on that now, and to make a big change. So in conclusion, let me again thank the government of Turkey for holding this very important work, for my partners in UNEP for the work that we've enjoyed doing with them, the other partners represented here in sister agencies, how we need to start looking at this right now. Thank you very much. So I'm stopping now as Habitat. I'm resuming my role as moderator. So it wouldn't really be appropriate to talk about food waste without inviting our sister UN agency, FAO, to join us to share their global initiatives on food loss and waste reduction. And we're joined today by Mr. Nurul Tal, the Senior Liaison Officer here in Geneva, representing FAO. Over to you.
Thank you, Graham. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to join you today at the Palais des Nations to mark this International Day of Zero Waste. We commend the leadership of Turkey on this important agenda along with UNEP and UN Habitat. This year's focus on zero food waste goes to the heart of the global challenges we face. At a time when nearly 800 million people experience hunger globally, the world continues to waste approximately 1 billion tons of food each year. This is not only a moral failure, but also an environmental and economic disaster. We know that about 13% of global food production is lost from post-harvest up until retail, and then 19% of food is wasted at the household, retail, and food services level. Therefore, reduction of food loss and waste is essential and is increasingly recognized as a catalytic lever for agri-food system transformation due to its potential to deliver core benefits across economic, social, and environmental dimensions. This recognition translated into action at the United Nations Food Systems Summit in 2021, where 91 of the 129 countries, meaning 70%, submitted national food system pathways, identified the reduction of food loss and waste as a priority area, 70%, underscoring its strategic importance and cross-cutting relevance. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, no single actor can make these important changes in isolation. Reducing food loss and waste requires a genuine multi-stakeholder approach. It's a collective responsibility. From farmers and producers to retailers, consumers, policymakers, and international organizations, each of us has a role to play. While solutions must be adapted to local context, the commitment must be global. At FAO, addressing food loss and waste is a central pillar of our effort to transform agri-food systems, making them more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable for better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life, leaving no one behind. We have the knowledge, we have the tools. What we need now is to accelerate implementation and scale up solutions. First, data are critical. Through the Food Loss Index, FAO monitors losses from post-harvest up to, but not including, retail. Complementing this, UNEP tracks food waste at the retail and consumer levels through the Food Waste Index. Together, these tools provide a comprehensive global picture and a basis for action. Second, we work with government to develop policies and strategies that incentivize reduction. For instance, FAO supported the government of Turkey in the development of a national strategy and action plan for the prevention, reduction, and monitoring of food loss and waste, and called it the Save Your Food movement. Third, we would like to highlight the critical importance of partnership and collaboration across silos. This is essential to address the interconnected drivers and impact of food loss and waste. Let me highlight 3 initiatives. Under the co-leadership of FAO and UNEP, Food is Never Waste Coalition was launched as part of the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit process. It aims to halve food waste by 2030 and to reduce food losses by at least 25%. Second, one important global effort is the co-funded by FAO Save Food Initiative, which brings together government, private sector, research institutions, and civil society to drive coordinated action. And third, with the Global Food Banking Network and Danone, the private sector enterprise Danone, FAO conducted a global survey of more than 500 stakeholders to document innovative practices in food recovery and redistribution. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on this International Day of Zero Waste, let me also recall that FAO co-organizes the celebration of the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste on the 29th of September. This is established by the UN in 2019, which promotes action to meet SDG target 12.3 to halve per capita food waste by 2030. If we act decisively, we can transform a system that currently wastes resources into one that values them. We can ease pressure on our planet while improving food security and nutrition for all. Therefore, let's coordinate our efforts and renew our commitment not only to reduce waste, but to build a future where food is respected, valued, and shared. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Tal. We will now hear from some of the institutions who are headquartered here in Geneva and the processes that they are leading in addressing food waste. I'm afraid this is a rather short, packed session for the rest of this afternoon because we are up against the clock. But without further ado, we will start with an intervention from the Executive Secretary of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions by the Executive Secretary, Mr. Rolf Pyatt. Rolf, over to you.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is of course an honor for me to join you together as we mark International Day of Zero Waste. Our focus this year on food waste calls us to act with urgency, innovation, and also shared purpose. Tackling food waste is not rocket science. When one thinks of the 1.3 billion tons of food waste, of which households contribute 60%, it is not difficult to see where our focus should be. Excellencies, what we face today is not an inevitability, but a choice, an opportunity to save money and scarce resources, and to prevent roughly 1/5 of methane emissions, a gas that is some 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide over the 20-year horizon. As we prepare for COP31, the Antalya Turkey, let us recognize that food and organic waste are not isolated issues. They intensify pressures on agriculture, water resources, and biodiversity, and are powerful contributors to climate change. Now is the moment to marshal our diplomatic influence, align policy and finance, and make waste prevention a central pillar for resilient, regenerative food systems and climate mitigation. As mentioned before, the SDG target 12.3, the world is committed to halving per capita food waste by 2030. And with 4 years to go, are we going to achieve this target? This generation carries both responsibility and also influence. We can do more than just celebrate the day today. We can catalyze transformation. We can align trade, aid, and development policies with embedded circular principles. We can share technologies, scale best practices, and mobilize finance for prevention and environmentally sound management of food waste. The Basel Convention has long championed prevention and minimization of waste. Its work shows how international framework and treaties can shift norms away from end-of-pipe fixes towards systems that focus on the life cycle and prevent waste in the first place. The Convention's public-private partnerships demonstrate how governments, businesses, civil society, academia, and indeed the youth can convert knowledge into practical solutions, from improved collection and segregation to sustainable treatment and safe disposal. Since 2017, the Household Waste Partnership has provided technical guidance, capacity building, and peer learning that help countries reduce waste at source and recover value from organic materials. These are the kinds of cooperative platforms we must expand and deepen. Indeed, there is no single silver bullet, but there are proven scalable solutions that deliver rapid results. And here, allow me to list a few. Prevention and behavioral change, smarter procurement, better storage, and consumer awareness can reduce waste before it is even created. Separation at source, simple systems that keep organics out of landfills and can cut methane emissions quickly. Composting and aerobic digestion, proven technologies that not only reduce emissions and waste, but can turn nutrients and moisture to soils, tackling land degradation, as well as produce renewable energy. Improve landfill management and capture and utilize methane as an energy source, especially when disposal remains unavoidable or practical. Investing in these measures yields immediate climate, biodiversity, and land degradation benefits, as well as strengthens food systems, creates jobs, and protects public health. Excellencies, progress begins with leadership. I urge you to champion policies that prioritize prevention, incentivize circular business models, and unlock finance for local solutions. Today, there are many platforms available where we can share innovations, harmonize standards, and support capacity building for countries with the greatest needs. Engage your ministries of agriculture, trade, finance, climate, and environment in a common strategy. Empower cities and municipalities, as well as communities, with the tools and resources to act. Elevate youth and civil society as partners in the design and delivery of this strategy. As you know, where public policy meets private ingenuity, transformation follows. In closing, let me say that zero waste is not a demand for perfection. It is a commitment to continuous progress. Every policy we pass, every system we design, every household we inspire moves us closer to a future where resources are efficiently used, waste is minimized, and nature is restored. Let us leave this special session today organized by UNEP, UN Habitat, and the mission of Turkey here in Geneva, resolve to act boldly, to cooperate generously, and lead with the conviction that a zero waste future is not only necessary, but also possible. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Payet. It's now my pleasure to invite Ms. Elizabeth Turk from the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe to speak about how the Commission is supporting enhancing the circular economy to prevent food loss and waste. Elizabeth, over to you.
Many thanks. Let me also start by thanking the organizers and also Ambassador Turkey for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today to join this celebration, the fourth celebration of this Zero Waste Day. And I'd like to start by saying here that it was also a great pleasure for me to travel with our UNEC Executive Secretary to the wonderful city of Turkey to really be there for the Zero Waste Summit only like 5 months ago. And on that occasion, we had the opportunity to meet the First Lady. And we went away with such an inspiration that really shapes our work and our day-to-day activities. So it's really a great pleasure for me to be here. And to show what UNECE, as the Economic Commission for Europe, can contribute, some very, very concrete normative tools. You might know that UNECE is a normative organization where we set standards, guidelines, soft law tools, that can actually create this behavior change that many of I will provide one or two particular tools from a particular sector, namely agriculture. And a little bit in line with what UNEP Director Mr. Kreilhuber has just said, I'm not going to only look at the behavioral change at the consumer side, but at the agricultural value chain. So if we go to the next slide, one key point is to say that much of the food loss actually already happens along the agricultural production chain. And this happens in activities such as production, harvest, transport, and retail. And we really have to see how we can shape what the economic actors do along the value chain already also before the food reaches the table where we wish to eat it. In the UNECE agricultural quality standards, there are about 100 of these quality standards. We look at fresh fruit, dried and dried produce, meat, and seed potatoes. And all of them have different food loss aspects. So if we think about fresh produce, if we think about, for example, table grapes, the issue really is in the handling and in the cooling of the fruit. If you think about the dry and the dried produce, you think about dried figs and dates and the nuts, then the issue and the challenge lies in the storage and in the moisture issues. When you think about the meat, it's quite obvious it's the cold chain. And when you think about the seed potatoes, a really, really important crop for nourishing the world, it is very much about the health of the plant and of the seed. So this is where the UNECE standards come in. As I said, there is like hundreds of them. And important to mention for the countries in the room, the UNECE quality standards, they do not only offer an opportunity for the 56 UNECE member states to engage, to shape them and to use them, but also globally. So we have many countries engaged in our standards that are not UNECE region, but globally. If we move to the next slide, I'd like to give you two concrete examples. One is potatoes. That was a standard, it was just adopted last week. And one is table grapes. So if we take the potatoes, now we know that potatoes are very, very important also for combating hunger. They are the fourth most important food crop globally. And we also know that potatoes are actually quite sensitive because the losses can be very, very high. It can be up to 30% if we have pests and diseases in the potatoes. So the issue really is how to preserve seed quality, because poor quality of the seeds leads to lower yields, higher losses, and more waste along the chain also subsequently. And that's where this standard from last week comes in. We call it the S1 seed potato standard from UNECE. And this standard ensures healthy and certified seeds. It helps reduce the spread of diseases, and it helps improving the plant health and the productivity. And that in turn really brings the higher yields, the smaller loss in the field and in the storage, and a better sort of like potato quality. And that helps us ensure that the potatoes that reach the supermarket and ultimately your fridge or your storage are not having to be wasted and thrown, but are solid and good quality. So that's the potatoes, and I hope you all received our news item about the successful conclusion of the negotiations last week. But let me give very briefly the second example, table grapes. And here I'm talking about a standard that is not yet adopted, but that is still in production, and a member state is still negotiating. And I think table grapes maybe also matter for Turkey. You're a main expert of this produce. And here we all know that the grapes are beautiful and they are big and they have like their particular shape, but they are typically being transported in sort of like plastic packages of 500 grams, half a kilo. So what can we do here? We can ensure, and this was a proposal by South Africa that was tabled in the last meeting, we can say that if you want to market table grapes as class 1, one option, the current option, is to have one big grape and only one small grape in it. But we could change that and say it's one big grape and maybe 2 or 3 of the smaller grapes to fill the form of the plastic container and to not waste all these grapes that have been cut off the big grape. So this is a very mundane, a very sort of like, how to say, practical example. But I'm giving that example because this is the type of issues that member states delegations negotiate in the UNECE platform. And we'll see where the negotiations go and whether this standard for the packaging of the table grapes will be adopted. So if we move to the next slide, these were just two examples of standards. Obviously, in UNECE, we also have a number of publications and guides, codes of good practices, and measuring modalities. We've heard about how important it is to measure the food loss issue. So we have produced that. And I would like to close by saying that, of course, we also engage on issues as important as innovation and infrastructure financing, all of which can help us join hands and, as the First Lady said, stand shoulder by shoulder when it comes to looking at this important issue of reducing food loss and really trying to create concrete impact on the ground. So I close it here and thank you again for the invitation, and I very much look forward to taking that further.
Thank you very much indeed. This is a very interesting presentation. Okay, so we'll now move to our last speaker for today, who will address the international standards to combat food loss and waste. Ms. Sophie Bouchers, who's part of the environmental sustainability team of the International Standards Organization. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you to the organisers for the invitation to speak in today's session. International standards are vital to tackle food loss and waste, as they will help organisations move from ad hoc initiatives to systematic, measurable improvements that are independently verifiable. So ISO is a not-for-profit organisation made up of 173 national standards bodies. So these are the officially recognised entities in each country who come together to create international standards in the ISO system. And these standards are developed through an open, transparent, and consensus-based process. ISO has a portfolio of over 25,000 standards across a wide range of sectors and touching on a vast array of environmental issues. I'd like to make clear from the outset that the international standardization process is open to all of you in this room, and I will explain a little bit more about this at the end. So, just put the slide up. I'm going to talk briefly about one specific ISO technical committee and forthcoming standard relevant to today's discussion. So ISO has a committee working specifically to address food loss and waste, which involves 66 different countries at the moment and 8 international liaison organisations. The committee is managed by Danish standards and is chaired by Liz Goodwin of the UK, who some of you will know. The committee is nearing completion of a standard known as ISO 20001, Food Loss and Waste Management, and the full title can be seen on the slide. The standard is intended to provide organisations across the food value chain with a structured, globally organised framework to systematically reduce food waste and loss throughout the food supply chain. So the future standard ISO 20001 aims to respond to increasing regulatory and stakeholder expectations, address the economic and environmental impacts of food loss and waste, and support global sustainability goals. The requirements of the standard are intended to be applicable to all organisations in the food supply chain, regardless of size and complexity. The standard will be certifiable, which means that documentation can be verified through third-party certification. As part of the consultation phase, the draft standard was tested by 160 different organisations across 37 countries. The feedback from this pilot has now been collated and will feed into the final standard for publication later this year. ISO 20001 is a management system standard, which follows an established harmonized structure, making it easier for companies to integrate and implement multiple standards at once. The pilot showed that companies who are already implementing other ISO management system standards, so typically ISO 14001 on environmental management, 9001 or 22,000 on food safety, are far more likely to adopt the future ISO 20001. So once published, ISO 20001 is expected to help organisations improve their operational efficiency and reduce costs, support compliance with emerging food waste regulations and policies, and strengthen transparency and credibility in communication with customers, authorities, and other stakeholders. In addition to 20,000, the ISO Technical Committee on Food Loss and Waste is also working on 2 other international standards on monitoring and reporting and on audit requirements. If you'd like to know more or get involved, more detailed information is available on iso.org, and you can search for the committee, the numbers on the screen, or the standard itself. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the international standardization process is open, so to national stakeholders through your national standards bodies, and to international stakeholders through the ISO liaison process. So, for example, on today's panel, UNEP, FAO, UNC, and UN Habitat all have ISO liaison status already. If you would like to get involved, please do feel free to get in touch either with me or reach out to us via climate@iso.org, and we can help guide you through the process. Thank you so much, and I remain available for any further questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Sophie. Well, I'm afraid time is against us this afternoon, so it's my pleasure really to thank all of our panelists and our audience for joining in this celebration of the Zero Waste Day. We hope we've given you a flavour of the ongoing multilateral actions to address food waste and how this very important topic must be addressed as we move forward, because otherwise this could turn into a major crisis. So on behalf of our gracious host, the government of Turkey, and on behalf of UNEP and UN Habitat, and indeed all the other partners who are here, thank you very much for your participation this afternoon. There will be an opportunity for some informal discussions afterwards once we've closed, if anybody here is interested. So thank you very much for your attention, and wish you the rest of a good day. Excellent. Well done. Thank you. I'm getting you.